It's a title winner opposite Christophe Lambert in this one. Josh Kane was last seen in this arena taking down the last man standing. But it was an event in which he didn't really have to do a huge amount of what we'll call graft. He was perched quite nicely on his chair for a long section of that weekend before sweeping in at the end and capturing all the gold. But can't do that in this event. It's almost the exact opposite. You've got to work really hard to get through to the final in this one. Got to play a lot of pool, got to play well for an extended period of time. And that's not always too easy to do. As you see Christophe at the table early in frame number one. That patented break has given him a good chance. And interesting already, I find this fascinating watching Christophe now. You can really spot the pace that he plays at around the table now. It's night and day from even a year ago, let alone two.
It's always been the way. For some reason, the French players always seem to have had that very methodical style. I remember years ago watching players like Yannick Beaufils at the World Championships. It was almost turning into a comedy where he wouldn't play any shot until you hit the 30-second mark. And it was perfectly entitled to. Those were the rules. He wasn't, he's a lovely guy as is Christophe. There's no sort of gamesmanship element, but it just seemed like that was the way the game was played in France. But as you say, Christophe has had to play in these faster formats, and like so many players in that position, he almost looks the better for it when he plays a bit quicker. Yeah,
agreed. I remember seeing him in the shootout in the Ultimate Pool USA event a couple of months ago. It was the one in Louisiana. And I believe that was Christophe's first taste of like a shootout event, and I couldn't believe what I was watching. It was like he was in fast forward. It was almost like he'd really G'd himself up to play as quickly as he humanly could. And Christophe's a good enough player to almost get away with doing that, if you like.
Yeah, I think that's the funny thing about Christophe. He's quite deceptive. You can watch him play and he can look quite slow and he can look quite methodical. And you can lose track of what a good attacking player he is and how quickly he can play if he has to. I mean, he's a maximum break snooker player. He's been around. He's done everything in the game. He is a phenomenal potter. It's just you sometimes don't quite realise that when you just watch him play a frame or two.
They talked about the USA shootout. The last USA shootout was in Kansas City, and Jordan Shepherd strolled up and won it with a borrowed cue, the first time playing with American equipment. So who knows? Maybe it's not too bad to make the switch. Christophe's going to get first go in this frame. It's a good break from Josh, but a dry one. I'll tell you what though, if he bottled that one and broke like that again and again and again in this match, he'll start to see results. The law of averages will even out eventually. It was a beautiful break that. The issue is for him, the lovely split he's left is for his opponent.
Well, that's become the thing. The standard of breaking is so high that even when players are going dry, they're generally leaving decent chances.
No surprise to see Christophe go yellows, but he's got a little fiddly shot to play here. I think he's going to have to play the plan. Fully expect him to make it.
Let's try and play it as straight as possible so that the other yellow stays hanging over the pocket.
Yeah, he's played that well. That was the only reason why I call it fiddly, because you couldn't really fail to not make that, but all of a sudden if the yellow you're playing ends up jawed on the middle pocket, it's a real problem ball then. Now our rowboat is in ship shape.
Josh Kane is obviously going to be delighted to have won that last man standing. Probably it wasn't the right trophy in the sense that he's played well enough to win other tournaments, and including the world title, where he came up agonisingly short to Clayton Castaldi in the final in last year's event. But he's definitely deserved a tournament the way he's played over the last couple of years.
I think for Josh, and I think he'd probably admit this himself, it's just putting together the performances. At his top level, he is as good as anybody else in the world. His A game is just outstanding. It's so good. The issue is how often can he access that A game? Can he put together a whole match with it? Okay. And then can he put together a whole tournament with it? And that's been a little bit the problem. I think, for me, the issue I see sometimes with Josh, and as I say, I don't want to be too critical, I really like Josh as a player, but almost feel like he's underachieved a little bit considering how good he is. And I think that's one of the sort of small problems he has, really, is that when you know how good you can be, if you're not at that level, I think he finds it so mentally difficult, and actually his sort of B and C game really suffers for it. It's a strange thing, because we've seen him put in flawless performances and knock out some unbelievable names in massive results, and then he'll go and lose the next one against a player he fancies to beat. As Christophe's going to have to settle for a double here. All of a sudden a little bit of jeopardy in this frame, and it's not going to go. That is a wasted opportunity for Christophe Lambert, as we chat about Josh Kane almost gently, because we felt the frame was all but done and dusted, really. Christophe just played a slightly dodgy positional shot there and been caught out.
Yeah, just got a bit careless towards the end of the frame. Not something you normally associate with him. He's a very tough match player, always just seems to do the right things. Coming back to Josh, though, I agree totally with what you're saying, and I think there's almost a pressure. People look at him saying, you know, why didn't you win that tournament? It's very hard to take it as a compliment. People mean it as a compliment because they're saying, you look such a good player, we think you should be winning all the time. It probably comes across sometimes like he's being called out for not closing out chances. I think winning that last man standing might help, though, because, you know, however you do it, obviously he's not going to claim undue credit for that performance. He knows he only played the one match, but he did what he needed to there. A tournament's a tournament, though. Sometimes he's in the winner's circle. He's got his name on the leaderboard.
Yeah, I don't think there's any substitute for winning whatever event it is.
It was so entertaining, though, that tournament. It was such a rogue result, the idea that somebody could come in and just win the final.
Brilliant, isn't it?
Coming into those last few matches, we were suddenly started to say to ourselves, could that actually happen? Is that a thing? It was the only tournament, obviously, in the year where that could be a thing. I mean, there were even some crazy results where he could have won without potting a black, without winning a frame. Well, obviously, it didn't play out like that. He just played well in the final in the end. Looks to be playing well here. This was a chance he wasn't expecting, but this is what you've got to do when your opponent misses the 8 ball. You've got to keep them in their chair, remind them how bad a mistake it was. Not a difficult clearance by any means, this, from Josh, but he's taken it really nicely. And what should have been 2-0 to the Frenchman is only 1-1.
There's no getting away from that, as we see the typical Christophe break. My favourite in the game.
So meticulous, isn't it? The amount of time he spends setting himself.
It's almost like, for me, I look at it almost like, you know, when like an old WWE wrestler does that like routine into the finishing move, and it's all the same movements and gestures and all the rest of it to hype it up. It really is just that. It's that set piece move of his, isn't it?
I mean, there's a lot to be said for it. You know, it's easy to dismiss it and say, like, does it really matter if you're breaking exactly the same every time? But that kind of consistency is often the only thing that separates top players. You have to do it in whatever way. Some people like the freedom of moving around a bit, setting themselves up differently every time. Other players, it's very repeatable. You just want to do exactly the same thing. And Christophe has made an absolute career of that level of consistency.
Yeah, he's definitely I mean, you can tell the way that he plays. He's got that sort of... He's got that within him, doesn't he? That meticulous approach to a lot of things.
You've also got to find the approach that's right for you. Like that's what's brought him success. Why would you change it?
It's interesting as well, because it's whether or not you buy into the voodoo of the break, if you like. Because is there a certain spot on the table where it's breaking a little bit nicer, or is that just all in a player's head? I'm tempted to go with the latter there, but my eyes see sometimes slightly different things. It doesn't always quite make sense, and we've seen it in recent tournaments where, you know, we've seen players. I think of Tom Cousins recently in Blackpool in the World Masters, where he struggled to get his break going. Then just he got a bit of a tip from, I think it was Ross Dunn. Just move your cue ball about there, and it just started firing. And there's no rhyme or reason for that at all, but it worked. So I can understand why players are fickle.
Yeah, and it's a bit like with technical things. Like sometimes when players get coaching, it's not the fact that it improves their game; it's that it almost distracts them from something else. Sometimes if somebody says to you something like, put your left foot an inch further to the left, you come to the table and all you're thinking about is that. So when you come to time the shot, it's just all natural. You're not thinking about how you hold the cue, how you release it, and actually, it's almost just it clears your mind of everything else.
Yeah, I know you're a big fan of the numbers, Mark. So that's probably, I'd imagine, how you'd rationalise it on the break. For example, you'd take a Christophe-like approach where I'm going to go for a solid strike, same place every time, repeatable action, do the same thing, and trust the averages fall in my favour.
Well, I think you've certainly got to trust what you think is the right thing to do. I mean, sometimes players turn up and they've practiced a couple of different breaks. I think where it does get a bit dodgy is if you come up dry a couple of times, then you're like, oh, this break's done, it's not working, and then you're almost like searching for a technique in the middle of the match. I think that doesn't work. I think where the numbers are important is if you've had a lot of success, a thing has gone well, you can't drop it off too lightly just because it's not worked a couple of times in a row. Meanwhile, Josh Kane, having had that sort of free warm-up frame last time out, just continuing where he left off.
Well, he looks really sharp, doesn't he, Josh?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is exactly what you were saying. Like, he just looks $1 million. When he's on it, he just looks great, and you're like, well, this guy's going to win everything. Yeah,
he really does have that factor, and I'm not exaggerating when I say his best game is as good as anybody else's in the world. It's exceptional.
But then I suppose that is the exact frustration, isn't it? If you can play this well, if you're ever not playing perfectly, it's there, straight into the middle pocket.
I will say he's got reason to be down on himself with that break, though. That was a real poor one. Hit his first break in this match beautifully, and yeah, that's a complete miss hit. Rockets into the side pocket, and Christophe Lambert gets a chance to respond and try and even things up at 2 each.
Which is, of course, not a position he was expecting to be in, because he had a simple chance to be 2-0 up, and instead of which he's scrapping his way back into the match.
It's a little bit of an interesting lie, this as well. Reds are kind of fiddly, yellows are kind of fiddly. It will be reds. I think they're easier to solve. The three sort of in a little shape to the right of the triangle area, I think do pick each other apart a little bit. Maybe not from here, mind.
No, I don't think with ball in hand he's going to be too happy at that one.
I'm sure he wanted to just be a ball roll higher, so he had access to the right centre pocket on that red, and he could just drop down almost to the right of that section. Although I must say, this squeezing in helps him. And he can do that. Oh, has he got access to the lowest of the three? Can he squeeze through to that? To bottom right? Must be able to.
Yeah, this whole clearance feels like a bit of a reroute from where he must have been planning, but
yeah, it is tight.
If not, he can clip the one in the middle still. Yeah, it's gone back to plan A or plan B. Deliberately played that with a bit of pace. Knew the cue ball was going to be travelling because it was thin. Just had to trust a bit to luck. Just hit one of those three reds. Hope they all opened up.
It's a very un-Christophe finish, this. But he's one good shot away from being in good position here.
Yeah, he's had a sort of middling result from that cannon. He's got the balls open, but just hasn't left anything nice for the next shot. It's exactly that. He's just going to have to pull out one decent shot.
Oh, he's judged that really well. But what's your next one? Good pot. Cue ball's loose. He's not once had the cue ball in this visit, really.
No, including starting the frame with ball in hand, which is very disappointing. Just slipped straight out of position off the first shot.
Just goes to show that how important. control of the cue ball is right from the very first shot in a visit. It can get away from you. Difficult to wrest it back sometimes. Tough plant this, it's completely offset. Oh, how well judged was that?
Yeah, that was a really good plant, wasn't it? He's been battling the shot clock as well. It feels like the 5 seconds has come up on him too quickly every time.
Well, this is where you can't blame him for taking a little bit longer over this pattern.
No match clock in operation, of course, for these group stages, which also means that there's no shortening of the shot clock. We'll be playing the 30 seconds throughout. Ooh, it's just gone in. Deliberately playing that a little bit thick, was trying to hold position. This is okay. It's not ideal. Just going to have to settle to leave the 8 at a bit of distance. Don't think he's going to want to power this in to get right up to the middle of the table. The white's going to naturally just drift a few inches off the bottom cushion, which will have to be good enough, I think.
Well, he's just goes to show he's done enough. It's not been easy.
It's going to be going through his mind, of course, that he has missed one 8-ball already in this match. Well, for a clearance that he started with ball in hand, he made that really difficult, but just kept pulling pot after pot out. In the end, it turned into a good clearance. It's one of those ones where you could have made it look quite easy if you'd been in perfect position. Ended up proving that he was a good player just by making life hard for himself.
Yeah, it was a funny one, wasn't it? His exhibition routine is flawless, really. He's got a lot. Oh well, that's that break. See, for me, I said this earlier. When his break is on song, it's you can't really break better than this. That cue ball just parks, keeps it as safe as you possibly can, and so much power through the pack.
I like that parking the cue ball as well. It used to be a lot bigger a part of the game. Like these days, people tend to try and screw the cue ball back. Always looks great when it comes off. It's like you get all the power into the pack, the white just stops dead. Feels like Christophe's really got the measure of Ultimate Pool the last season or two. On a Pro Series event last season, had a quarter-final and a semi-final in his last 2 visits to Blackpool for Pro Series this year. Just seems to always be there or thereabouts. He's always just been on the fringes of the top 16, currently sitting at 15 in the provisional rankings. Maybe in the first season or 2 of Ultimate Pool, he was one of those players you'd say you wouldn't be surprised if he won an event, but you perhaps weren't having him as the automatic favourite. He's just pushed that little bit further up now, where you're seeing him as quite a likely tournament winner.
And that's the thing when you've got as much experience as he does, is he knows how to win. And, you know, we've got plenty of younger players on the tour who, you know, we saw Luke Gilbert earlier on this year win a Pro Series, but I think until you do sort of win that first one as a younger player, they're always, I mean, look, man, it looked quite easy in the end, actually, for how difficult they're supposed to be. But you can't really put a price on that.
No, I think
winning quality.
Yeah, I think it's a very underrated skill. It almost sounds like you're stating the obvious, and people say, well, how hard is it when you're a player that's winning a lot of matches? And people are like, well, just win a few more matches, stick them all together. But actually, just getting over the line and closing out tournaments is a very different skill. And I think actually, is this going to be a foul? Yes, it is, as he comes off the cushion and hits the ball as he comes away from the cushion. Has the referee called that? I didn't think anything.
Well, I think...
Was he touching ball?
Yeah, he was touching ball, yeah. So he played the cushion initially onto the bottom rail, so that would have counted as cushion after contact. Yeah, it was a bit of a sore one for Christophe, because it was about as bad as he could land after that breakout shot. Didn't have access to any pot. And it's a pretty good safety, you'd say. You can see Josh shaking his head a little bit. I think he's almost demanding he makes a really, really tough pot down the rail. That's even if it squeezes through. So I'm not 100% sure it does. It was tight.
Yeah, Okay, I'd completely lost track there. I thought Christophe was trying to play the red. It was just Josh was the reds, of course, and it was a touching ball on the yellows. Coming back to what we were saying about the winning, I think one of the things that helped Luke Gilbert was the fact that he'd been such a prolific winner in international tournaments, and particularly the under-23 age group ones. The fact that he'd got such a big trophy collection over the last year or two made pushing on winning senior titles just that bit easier. That's one of the advantages you have if you come through and win a lot of junior tournaments. I mean, obviously they're not easy to win because everybody in those events are good as well, but it's easier than the Pro Series. We've seen some amazing players who've batted so hard in so many Pro Series events and have yet to get their hands on any silverware.
A bit of a wild one. Had to do a lot of manoeuvring with that one shot.
Been the scrappiest frame of the match so far. Now for Josh Kane, this is looking a lot more promising. This time he has got an easy opener. Not too much to do with the other balls. A few different ways he can go about this. Could have made a case for playing the red to the left centre, hold on that yellow and then play across the table the other way. It always felt like the red on the break line was going to be the most difficult of the balls to get onto. Not difficult by any means because it's right in the centre of the table, but it was the only one where you could end up off angle.
Yeah, just a bit more difficult to connect it, wasn't it?
So now rerouting back up. I mean, this is absolutely fine. You can now leave a perfect angle on that ball that's on the break line. Just a bit more travel this way around. The 8 ball does go bottom left, so not too much to do here. He's got a big area to land in.
Race to 6, remember, and Josh Kane is about to reach the halfway point. 3-2 in front. No match clock. We are in the group stages of the Ultimate Pool European Open.
Wow, crunching break. Ball's flying around the table, but nothing finds a pocket.
Hey, he's having a bit of a giggle out there, Josh, because nothing's quite working for him. This is his third break in the match, I think, and one beautifully hit, no friends, one straight in off, and one again pretty well hit, but no balls down. Christophe has had plenty of opportunities in this match, which is why he'll be pretty sore that he's behind. Still a long way to go there. Races to 6.
This is where the absence of a match clock is really helpful when you slip behind in a match. Sometimes if you're chasing the time as well, you end up having to go for stuff you don't really want to. This time he knows he can play it as a proper match. If he needs to grind his way back in, then so be it.
Yeah, it makes, for us, the groups a little bit easier to work out as well with the absence of the draw. So yeah, not complaining about the lack of match clock for the groups, that's okay.
It's done, of course, because it would be too hard to have match clocks on all the outside tables, and there's a desire to have consistency across all the matches, which makes perfect sense. Quite a fun format, this, because we get a bit of both. We get the slightly slower format and the group stages at the beginning, and then once we get into that knockout stage, all the pressure suddenly ramps up.
It's quite a key shot in this visit, I think, for Christophe. Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah, he's played that cannon really well, because not only has he opened the yellow up, but he's landed nicely on it straight away. So just take it as his next ball.
Just a little bit of a spring in the step of the Frenchman here.
Yeah, it's so often the way you can tell how someone is doing in a frame or match just without even looking at the table, just watch their body language. So started out as a best of 11, down to a best of 5, 3 frames apiece. We've seen so often the case where players who haven't got the big match table experience find it hard their first time out here. I don't think it will play out like that, because we're hand selecting matches that we think the viewers will find entertaining, so for the most part you're going to see some of the bigger names on this main match table. Cue ball flirting with that corner pocket, and ultimately does find its way in. Ball in hand quite useful here. Obviously he can manufacture exactly the position he wants to start with. Could really go either colour from here. Both of them have come out quite nice. The red's just that little bit more open. When you've had a lead in a match, you kind of want to hang on to it, so Josh will be keen to get this frame. Just take the outside of these 2 reds to the bottom left-hand corner pocket, and then all just dot to dot with the remaining balls. Josh is another player that's capable of playing very quickly. I think you perhaps see him as quite a quick player sometimes, and particularly when he's practicing. Can be quite measured in a match. Likes to make sure he's got the pattern absolutely right. That's the skill, of course, to make sure you use the time wisely. Decided he wasn't quite perfect on this ball he's about to pot now the last time around, so took the ball at the top of the table and then came back for it. Just a slight cannon on the ball to the middle. It wasn't that he needed to develop it, but just couldn't quite avoid it, so just pushed through. As it happens, it's knocked it even nearer the pocket, which makes life even easier. And all the hard work already done in this frame. These balls link up well and provide natural position onto the 8 ball. Three matches we've seen today, they've all been kind of different. The first one was very open, Tom Cousins just ran away with it. The second one was all around the tricky clearances. Felt like both players were having to chase things, but just seemed to keep getting there. And this one's just had a bit more back and forth between the players. There's been a couple of mistakes in there, but generally it both looked pretty good. Wow, yet again, cue ball just flying off the front ball. I mean, if that was a pot that you were going for, you'd be missing the pot by a long way, because you see how far he's come across that front ball. So Christophe, the luxury of ball in hand, wants to go after the reds, of course, because there's a red over the bottom pocket. Looking at whether he can play red off yellow into the middle pocket here. Doesn't have to go for these balls first, but because this red that he's currently eyeing up is the most difficult one, he was kind of tempted to go for it. He's possibly wisely concluded, though, that the very last thing you'd want to do would be to miss it and leave an open table.
Oh, that's disastrous. Well, this is now a key frame at 4-3. There's some mileage in this. Christophe almost angrily down on the next shot. Played within 8 seconds. Oh wow, this is a lot going on here. You can see what he's just lined up. He's seen that quickly. Watch this yellow.
Well, he's ended up playing the shot that he was eyeing up earlier on, but the difference now is that in the meantime he's knocked another ball safe. Needs an angle.
I thought he was looking at cannoning that yellow all the way into the bottom left of the table. I thought that was why he was lining it up, but actually he's happy just to leave it as a double.
Well, it's been a bizarre frame. He played the first shot so slowly he almost time fouled, and then since then he's been playing at a blistering pace.
Well, nails it. angry pull from Christophe Lambert.
Oh, what a strange visit. Looked like he could have had quite a simple clearance when he had ball in hand at the beginning. Kind of rushed into a shot which then made life hard, and then potted his way back out of trouble again. And the 8 ball safely down. Well, don't know what you call it. Angry, quick, impatient. Got the job done though.
We've got a couple more results coming in from it. Declan Brennan won a hill-hill battle with Ian Alley earlier on this morning. Andrew Patchett has beaten Greg Batten 6-3. Great result that for Andrew. Connor Tracy currently 4-3 up on Scott Pope. Big games coming up in that group. Every match in that group is crucial.
Yeah, it's a completely different group from this one, isn't it? This one, it feels like you could lose a couple of matches and still have some confidence of going through, and that one, it feels like any loss could be really costly. Yeah, sorry, just interrupting you there. As you're saying, Christophe's got a dry break again, which is not what he was looking for. I don't know, going back to your point about whether it's the sort of the conditions of the table or whether it's all psychology, I haven't really seen anyone completely nail the break so far on this table today.
No. It has been quite a funny one. But it always is.
Yeah, you just can't read too much into it. When you're only playing race to sixes, you're only seeing the same player break a handful of times. Once we've seen a few more matches, we'll draw more of a conclusion. The table, as ever, looks to be playing great. It doesn't look like there's any issue with the equipment. It's just sometimes slight change in conditions maybe changes the outcome. The British summer, of course, with us in a big way, although nobody involved in this event is going to be seeing very much of it. We're going to be in a darkened room for the next 3 days as we press on through this tournament. Good ball down the rail. That was the only ball you could really have seen causing Josh a problem. Couldn't get close to this ball at the bottom of the table. I'd really like to take the ball that's right at the bottom next, and then all the balls are together at the top. These ones are very easy to push into the cushion. Just got to keep your head still as you play the shot. I just brushed the cushion, but
yeah, he got away with that a bit. You can see the reaction. He knows he didn't play that very well. Played well enough, but yeah, it wasn't clean.
Yeah, and at this level, although the players like to see the ball in, there's a sort of pride in performance. You're almost embarrassed when you don't hit a ball cleanly.
Yeah, and it will be interesting come September. We've got a new Pro Series, of course, coming up in September, where it will be the introduction of the old Rasson tables, which will be very interesting to watch. No one sort of really knows. It's a bit of an X factor, but I think part of the expectation with the new equipment will be that we see a little bit less of those sort of shots going in, which I think pleases just about everybody. You know, we as viewers don't love seeing it. Players certainly don't love it. They'll always advocate for tighter pockets, or at least the best ones will. I think anyone who has aspirations on the pro circuit would absolutely say that.
Yeah, it's the unknown, isn't it, that's interesting with those Rasson tables.
Lovely shot from Josh.
I've played on Rasson tables quite a bit over the years. They're 9-ball tables, which are beautiful tables and play very well and very consistently. They've been a leader in providing those tables for quite a number of years. First foray into the smaller English 8-ball table.
A lovely couple of shots in succession there from Josh Kane to retake the lead and climb atop the hill at 5-4 in front.
It's always interesting whenever you're coming up with a clean sheet design of anything in life. It's like you're trying to build on what's popular already and then make a few of your own tweaks.
Oh wow. Well, you know that conversation we were having earlier about the break? There's the argument for going with feel rather than you know, quality of impact. Josh has hit a few really good breaks. He's hit a couple of really bad ones, mind, as well. Switches the cut break and crunches it.
Yeah, I think that time he almost felt like he had to do something different. He'd gone in off in the same way twice in a row, or twice in the match, which is annoying at this level. Just wanted to mix it up. Bar the fact that that red has hung over the middle pocket, these are really nice. It's got the problem though with access to the yellow that's on the left hand side. Looking at whether a double is possible. You almost feel slightly aggrieved in this position when you've broken as well as that and the balls are split out well. When you turn away from the table to put your break cue down, you're often thinking you're going to be greeted with a perfect layout. He's just got the one problem to negotiate. You always like to get it done first time when you're on the hill, particularly as it's Christophe that will be breaking if we do go to a decider. Just let go of the cue ball a bit there. That wasn't where he wanted to finish up. So he can just take his medicine, roll the ball in the right centre, take the yellow down to the bottom right and then just leave a double for the last ball. Looks like that is what he's committing to. It's quite tight because if he plays that double he's going to have to avoid the red that's frozen to the left rail. It's not quite as much space as that angle maybe makes it look like. The one good thing is that he really hasn't got to do anything positionally, just kill the cue ball anywhere around where the yellow is. Knows he's going to have a shot at the 8. He's looked at this quite a few times, which tells you how tight this is.
Yeah, I mean, you take one look at the overhead and it looks like it's barely on. Yeah, that was really tough.
I wonder if he could have looked to get into that earlier on. That double just always looks so tricky. He's had a couple of balls near the right centre that could have screwed across the table. I think the problem was the red wasn't quite near enough the pocket that he could play it as a combination shot, and the yellow wasn't in an easy place to free, which is why he talked himself into the double. And this is always the way. You miss the first chance, your opponent's gleefully at the table for a much easier version.
And to go 5-5 with the break, there is a not unrealistic chance that that was Josh Kane's last shot in the match. That's the stage of the game we're at now.
Yeah, how crazy would that be?
Oh, that's a bad shot. Oh, he just got away with it? I think so. Yeah, just.
Yeah, didn't need to be anywhere near that, but as it was, it's almost turned out better because it's now left him with a great angle on his last ball. Important stuff this for Christophe. As we mentioned, he lost his first game, so wants to give himself at least a chance of winning this one. See, just psyche himself up before this 8 ball.
Five all we go.
Well, it's gone through the whole pre-break routine, but hasn't managed to deliver the break that he needs.
Didn't really do a lot wrong with it, did he? Look at the explosion of the pack. What's he left, though?
You wouldn't quite go as far as saying this deciding frame as for Christophe's tournament life, but it's one that would dramatically change the rest of his weekend. If he could just nick a win here, he leaves himself in great shape to qualify. If he does lose, he's going to have to battle it the hard way. nervous moment there. Josh just holds out his hand, just wants the cue ball to pull up. He's got a couple of balls on the left-hand side of the table, aren't in great spots.
Better now.
Left a double on his last ball in the last frame. Is he going to leave that yellow that's below the left centre as a double, or is he going to try to find some route into it? If he does leave it as a double, it's a much easier double than the one he missed in the last frame. Well, decides to move it out. How's his luck? It looks very tight. I don't think that yellow goes past the red. Not sure if that shot was quite as played. May have been trying to catch the cushion first. Well, you see from that angle that ball doesn't go at all. Could have a second bite of the cherry and go into it again, or could just take his medicine and go for the double. Hasn't got the angle this time. If he'd finished high on the ball to the left centre, he could have tried to play a developing cannon. So it looks like it's going to have to be the double. He hasn't got any route into it from where he currently is. Just looking at where he wants to bring the cue ball back. Just to come down the table just below the 8 ball. It's very close to having a double kiss angle here. Could have done with the cue ball going a couple of inches higher up the table. I think the fact it's just off the cushion means he can just manufacture this. Hasn't got to do too much with the white. Oh, great shot. Pressure shot, that.
Yeah, match-winning shot from Josh Kane. He knew it as well. Immediate little puff of the cheeks once that one went down. Terrific matchup between two great players. And Christophe Lambert has lost his opening 2 matches of his 5. He now needs to run a little bit of a gauntlet. Needs to win certainly 2, maybe all 3 of his remaining fixtures to stay alive in this European Open.